Welcome to Reading Bear. Today we've got a story where OP gets mocked as useless by a new boss who cuts all the non-essential work and demands everyone follow the process. No exceptions. I didn't plan to become the guy whose quiet job kept a whole company standing. I just liked spreadsheets, clean data, and a routine that didn't chew me up. I also have a disability that means I pace myself and protect my focus. I was hired because I'm good with systems and I document everything. For a long time, nobody called that remarkable. It was just work. Orders came in, shipments went out, and the lights stayed on because people like me did the boilerplate checks nobody notices until they stop. The company sold specialized equipment to other businesses, mid-sized, not glamorous, and built on thin margins and long relationships. There were nicer offices out there, but we were stable. I handled a bundle of jobs that landed between IT and operations, vendor file feeds, license renewals, the weekly reconciliation between our accounting system and the order platform, the reminders for compliance filings, and all the weird fixes you only learn after watching a system fail in a dozen boring ways. Over time, I had built small automations to keep us out of ditches, nothing fancy. Just scripts that nudged, checked, rotated, and logged. If something broke at 2 a.m, I usually knew why from the error code before the second ring. My disability doesn't make me less capable. It just makes planning matter. I have medical appointments and I don't work 12-hour sprints. I asked for basic accommodations, a quiet spot, clear priorities, and no surprise, drop everything and live at your desk, demands. HR signed off. My manager knew. It was boring and fine. Then the new boss arrived. He was one of those guys who uses disruption like it's a personality. He came in swinging a whiteboard marker like a sword and said we were bloated, slow, and allergic to growth. His plan was to cut non-essential work, centralize decisions, and remove blockages. When he said blockages, he looked straight at me, like I was a knot in a rope he wanted to slice through. I noticed that, and so did everyone else. In the first week, he called me into a quick meeting. He asked what I did all day. I walked him through my checklists and the invisible glue bits, the SSL certificate for the order portal that expires unless someone renews it, the SFTP keys for vendors that need rotation, the cross-check with accounting so revenue doesn't drift from shipments, the alert I set that catches a tax report before it goes late, the arrangement with a support rep who fast-tracks our tickets because we send clean logs. I explained that our systems would run without me for a while, but they run well with me because I keep them between the lines. He nodded, wrote nothing, and finally said, "Sounds like you're babysitting." I'm not a confrontational person. I said that the babysitting is the reason alarms don't go off. He smiled the way people smile when they think they found a joke and said, "We need outcomes, not excuses." I went back to my desk and added a page to my documentation file called New Boss Notes. Over the next month, he cut the weekly operations huddle, cut the chat channel where I posted reminders, and pushed everything through himself. He said he wanted one throat to choke. He also started dropping lines about performance. He'd say, "If you can't handle essential functions, say so." Or, "We can't carry dead weight." He didn't say the word disabled in those moments. But he made a show of noticing when I left for a medical appointment, and he once joked in front of sales that I had a part-time vibe. I typed the quotes into my notes, stamped them with dates, and got back to work. The incident that lit the fuse happened after he sent a company-wide email titled, "No Heroes." It said, in plain words, that there would be no unsanctioned fixes, no work outside of assigned tickets, no cross-department chatting that wasn't routed through him or a designated lead. It also said that anyone circumventing the chain would face corrective action. He ended it with a sentence that I can still hear when I close my eyes. If an issue isn't assigned to you, don't touch it. If a task isn't on your job description, don't do it. We move as one. Up to that point, a third of my value was the stuff I caught before it hit a ticket. I'd see a certificate date in my dashboard and renew it, see a drift in the ledger and fix the mapping, ping a vendor before their key expired, or nudge finance the day before a filing deadline. It was never dramatic. The goal was to make nothing happen. The No Heroes email turned nothing into landmines. I replied to his email with a short note. To confirm, should recurring maintenance and proactive checks that I have historically handled be converted into tickets before action? Some of these do not currently have tickets because they are routine. He wrote back, "All work goes through tickets I assign. If it isn't assigned, it isn't your priority." I copied HR, attached the email, and saved it in my documentation folder along with a list titled, "Things I will stop doing unless assigned." The first test came fast. Our main vendor's SFTP key rotation was due. Previously, I'd send them a new public key, update our server, and confirm handoff in under an hour. Instead, I opened a ticket and assigned it to the boss's queue, tagging it as time sensitive. He didn't pick it up. I posted in the general channel asking for assignment. He replied publicly with, "Follow the process." So I did. The key expired. The vendor's overnight feeds failed. The order import the next morning was empty. Sales swore. Support swore. The boss paged me. "Why didn't you handle this?" I pasted the ticket link and his "follow the process" reply. He told everyone that we were cleaning up legacy chaos, which was a polite way of saying we had tripped on our shoelaces while bragging about running faster. I wasn't smug about it. I wasn't anything. I just felt a click in my brain. He had handed me the rulebook for how to let him trip over his own feet while staying square with policy. I didn't exaggerate it. I didn't invent extra work. I just stopped catching flying plates, he claimed, weren't mine. I scheduled my medical appointments like always and blocked the time in the calendar like I was supposed to. He made a frown in passing, but never said anything that could stick. He did, however, call me useless under his breath once when he passed my desk and saw me typing documentation. I wrote the quote down, the date, and who was nearby. The nearby person later told HR what she heard without me asking. That went into the file too. The next failure was the SSL certificate for our order portal. The old process was simple. I'd renew it a week early and swap it at a quiet time. The new process was to open a ticket and wait. I opened the ticket, tagged it red, and included the exact expiration date. The boss changed the due date because he said he had a launch to run. The portal went down when the cert expired. Customers couldn't log in. Support lit up. He pinged me with, "Why didn't you handle this?" I replied with a screenshot of my ticket and his due date change. He told the executive channel that we were learning to plan better. I kept my head down and added SSL renewal, missed due to reassignment, to my list. By then, my quiet compliance had a rhythm. If it was assigned to me, I did it, top to bottom, as fast as I could. If it wasn't, I did nothing and wrote down the reason. I didn't escalate outside the chain. I didn't text my friend in shipping with a heads up about a stock mismatch. I didn't fix the malformed tax code mapping I spotted while running a report. I didn't remind finance about the regulatory filing due after the holiday. I handed the boss exactly the world he said he wanted. No heroes, no crosstalk, no glue. The filing is the one that really hurt. The penalty isn't catastrophic if you miss it once, but it makes auditors pull threads. If they pull enough threads, they find other things. I had a standing calendar reminder and a template email for the doc. I created a ticket for it and asked for assignment. He replied, "Finance's problem." So I closed the ticket per his direction. The filing was missed. The penalty hit. The auditors booked time. I printed the email that said, "Finance's problem," and placed it in my folder. I wasn't keeping receipts for revenge. I was keeping them because I knew I'd need to prove I followed orders when the music stopped. Around the same time, the boss announced a cost savings initiative. He canceled our support tier with the vendor that runs our order platform because he said we could handle incidents in-house. I posted a comment in the cost savings thread that listed the incidents we had used that vendor for over the last year and the response times they had given. He replied with a thumbs up emoji and wrote, "We'll be fine." We were not fine. When the next incident hit a deadlock bug in the order queue that escalated at lunch, the vendor refused to touch it because we were downgraded. It took us a day to untangle what they would have fixed in an hour. That day involved canceled shipments and a very angry customer who later found a new supplier. The tipping point for me came when he tried to use my disability as a wedge. He called me into a one-on-one and said my output didn't match my pay. I asked for specifics. He said he didn't have time to get into it. He said I had a lot of special exceptions. I told him my accommodations were documented, approved, and didn't change the essential functions of my job. He said, "If you can't keep up, we'll have to reconsider your seat." I sent a summary of that meeting to HR with a neutral tone and attached my job description, my accommodation letter, and a list of projects I had completed. HR replied and scheduled a meeting. The boss canceled the meeting twice, then showed up late and called it a waste of cycles. HR didn't love that. A week later, he sent another email. This one was directed at me by name. It said that all communication to external vendors had to go through him or the purchasing lead. It also said any automation or scripts I had built needed to be turned off until he reviewed them. He framed it as a security step. I knew what it would do. It would remove the guardrails that caught stray errors before they became fires. I asked for a meeting with him and HR to confirm the request. In the meeting, he said, "Turn them off. If something breaks, we'll see it and fix it for real." HR asked him to confirm in writing that he understood the risk. He did. I turned them off and logged the change. The first week without the scripts, we got lucky. Nothing timed out. The second week, the nightly reconciliation between the order platform and accounting drifted by a few thousand. Usually, the script flagged those and created a tidy list of mismapped SKUs or taxes that got dropped. Without it, the drift sat there. Accounting didn't notice because their report looked fine. Operations didn't notice because their report looked fine. The drift became a knot. It sat through a quarterly close. The auditors found it later and asked for a full trace. Tracing took days, and while we traced, we didn't ship as much because we were busy explaining why numbers didn't match. Another script rotated backups to an off-site store every night. Disabling it didn't mean we had no backups, but it meant we had fewer, and they were older. The boss wanted to reduce storage cost and said weekly was fine. I said weekly was risk. He said, "Noted. Do weekly." I did weekly. The day a warehouse user uploaded a corrupt file that got ingested into the order queue, we had to roll back. The previous nightly backup would have saved a day. The weekly backup cost us the better part of a week in rekeying orders and telling customers their deliveries would slip. I sent a polite recap. Per directive, backup frequency set to weekly. Result, rollback window increased. He didn't reply. At some point, sales lost patience. I heard one of them tell the boss, "You broke the engine." He told them they were dramatic and that change is hard. He said I was resistant and that I had created a brittle system to protect my job. He said the word disabled in a sentence about performance during a management meeting. Someone in that meeting told HR. HR called me to ask if I wanted to file a formal complaint now. I sent the stack of emails, the No Heroes memo, the instruction to disable automations, and the ticket where he overrode the SSL due date. I included a short timeline with neutral language. HR thanked me and started an investigation. I don't know what happened behind the HR door, but the boss spent the next week indicating that lawyers love process. He also told me I was on thin ice. I wasn't. I was following the process he insisted on. Whatever he was trying to build was now clicking into place. It was a machine that produced delays, penalties, outages, and angry customers. And I was the part that made all of that visible with tidy timestamps. The breaking event came wrapped in a rollout. The boss wanted a new pricing module turned on in the order platform. I had been testing it in the sandbox for weeks and had a list of edge cases that needed fixes, rounding rules that made small items go negative, a mismatch with tax codes in 2 regions, and a quirk that doubled freight on split shipments. I wrote the list, opened a ticket, and asked for a delay until the vendor issued their patch. The boss closed my ticket with a note that said, "Stop blocking." I joined the rollout call because he assigned me to monitor. It went live. Within an hour, orders started pricing wrong. Small orders were free. Big orders were double what they should be, and the freight calculation turned into a coin toss. The warehouse stopped packing because the pick tickets didn't match reality. Support got crushed. Sales tried to override prices by hand and made a mess. The boss told everyone to keep going, that the vendor would fix it live. The vendor refused because that's not how any of this works. The boss told me to make it right. I replied that he had turned off the scripts that would have caught the errors before they hit production and had removed our support tier, and that I needed authorization to roll back. He said, "No rollbacks." We didn't roll back. We kept shipping mistakes for 2 days. Then a big customer canceled a quarter's worth of orders and cited breach of contract. That was the kind of hit you can't shrug off when margins are thin. The board called an emergency meeting. Afterward, the boss walked around pumping his hands and saying we would win it back with hustle. People looked at the floor. The boss called me useless that night, in front of the team. He said I had built a maze nobody but me could navigate. He said my disability made me fragile. He said I should think about my future. I didn't say anything. I sent a note to HR with the quote and a short summary of the rollout, attached timestamps, and asked to use my paid time for the rest of the week because I was done taking verbal hits. HR approved. The boss wrote that my absence at a critical time would be noted in my file. HR replied to both of us that accommodations and leave were protected and not to be used as negative factors. That told me plenty about where their investigation was going. While I was out, the auditors finished their preliminary work and sent an interim report. The drift, the missed filing, and the rollback that didn't match the ledger became a formal finding. Our lender saw it. Lenders don't love surprises. They pulled a covenant and asked for extra reserves. The CFO didn't have that kind of cash handy. He left the company within a month. The board brought in a consultant who announced a strategic review. Those two words have an odor. Everyone could smell it. HR wrapped their investigation and handed the boss a consequence. I wasn't in the room, but I saw the edges of it. He stopped calling me names out loud. He started keying HR on everything he sent me. He asked me to turn my scripts back on. I said I'd do that once he assigned tickets to review each and signed off that he had restored the support contract and scheduled a proper cutover plan for the pricing module after the vendor patch. He replied, "Just turn them on." I replied with his No Heroes email and the security review requirement he had invented. HR wrote, "Follow the documented process." He didn't answer. The board decided to get out ahead of the trend and tried to sell the company to a competitor down the highway. Due diligence was a minefield because of the months of drift, fines, lost accounts, and the big, messy rollout. I sent the data rooms everything they asked for, neatly. I also sent them copies of the tickets and the emails where decisions were made over my objections. I didn't editorialize. I just showed the story the way it happened. Dates, assignments, changes, consequences. The buyer cut their offer in half and then sliced it again. I started taking recruiter calls. I didn't blast the company. I just said I was looking for a place that valued boring stability and respected written process and accommodations. There are more of those places than people think. The first interview that felt right was with a logistics firm that had grown slowly on purpose. The hiring manager didn't ask me to prove I could work nights. He asked me how I prevent nights from becoming necessary. I explained my checklists, my guardrails, and my belief that good systems make heroes unnecessary. He said, "That's exactly what we need." I gave notice. I wrote a handover doc that could have trained a room. It had everything. Job duties, contacts, scripts, schedules, where the bodies were buried, which don't look scary until you see them stand up. I included a calendar of upcoming renewals, the list of scripts, and the report queries for each weekly check. I also included a short note at the top that said, "All of this can be done by anyone if you let them." I handed it to the boss in a meeting with HR. He flipped through it fast, tossed it on the table, and said, "Noted," or thanked me like they meant it. At the new job, I slept through the night again. I still glance at clocks, like old habits, but the knot in my shoulders is gone. I have a small team now. I teach them my runbook mantra. If we do our jobs well, no one notices. That's the goal. We don't chase fires, we stack sandbags before it rains. My medical appointments are on my calendar and nobody treats them like a crime. When I ask for a ticket to do a proactive fix, they assign it. Everyone cheers when nothing happens. I didn't pay much attention to my old company after I left. I had done the math in my head. They might limp forward, or they might learn. They chose limping. Word got around through former coworkers. They lost another big account. The strategic review turned into a breakup. The competitor down the highway bought the assets they wanted and left the rest. The boss did a video to thank the team for their hard work in a challenging environment, and then he was gone. People called it a merger. The warehouse called it what it was. I got a message from someone who had stayed long enough to see the end. She said some of the board had tried to lay the whole mess at my feet, which lasted exactly until the buyer saw the documentation trail and the No Heroes memo with the boss's signature. Apparently, one of the buyer's due diligence folks said, "You had a person who carried risk like a dam, and you made them stop. Then you blamed them for the flood." The buyer kept a handful of people. A lot of good folks scattered and landed on their feet elsewhere. The building got a new sign. The old logo was a sticker on a coffee mug now. Sometimes I replay the moment he called me useless. It still stings even though I won by leaving and letting his own rules do the damage. I don't think people like him see other people at all. They see pieces on a board. When a piece doesn't move the way they want, they push harder until it breaks, and then they act shocked the board cracks. The best part of all of this wasn't the collapse. It was realizing I wasn't a hostage. I didn't need to hold a wall up for someone who was busy digging at its base. I could step away and let gravity teach the lesson. The themes write themselves. Power without understanding is loud and brittle. Respect is cheaper than repair. Documentation is kindness to your future self and everyone else. And a person's disability isn't an invitation to treat them like they owe you proof. It's a reminder to build systems that don't rely on one person taking the punch every day and smiling about it. I needed accommodation so I could do my job without wrecking my health. He should have looked at that and thought, good. Predictability. He chose drama. Drama sent out invoices. These days, my favorite part of the job is a little dashboard I keep open. It shows green check marks for backups, renewals, key rotations, and filings. It looks boring even to me. When I share it with my boss, he says the same thing every time. Great. Nothing happened. And that's the whole point. Nothing happened because we did the things other people call babysitting. Nothing happened because everyone has permission to be a hero in quiet ways. Nothing happened because we built a team that doesn't need to pretend to be busy while stepping over risks. That's the story. No cliffhanger, no twist hiding in the wings. Just a slow burn where the ending is the natural result of a dozen small choices. If you read this and see yourself in the new boss, I can't help you. If you read it and see yourself in me, here's the only advice I earned the hard way. Document everything. Route work through the path you're told to use. And don't bleed out trying to be the hero for someone who calls you useless. Let their rules show their results. Then go find a place that treats boring like gold and lets you keep your health while you keep the lights on. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow.